We do bring up the idea of policy a lot on this channel. And of course, you hear politicians do a lot of talking. But when it comes to policy, maybe this is what often politicians end up talking about, or even around in some cases. Policy is incredibly important because policy can really tell you what it is a party intends to do and how they intend to do it. So policy is always really important when it comes to politics. You can spend talking all up sundown and sun up till about talking about politics, but unless that conversation includes policy, you're really talking about nothing, to be honest. So I always do make an effort to talk about policy and to do articles like this about policy when it comes to it, because I've always said this: when it comes to Brexit, it was completely policyless. It was just a nice idea with some nice slogans, but then what? And the then what was meant to be, how do you do this? And of course, at the time, this was shouted out as Project Fear, or this will be fine, it'll go all right. We hold all the cards. We don't need to listen to experts, etc., etc. It was a complete abandonment and a refusal to even talk or engage about policy during this. And one of the biggest, shall we say, performances we are seeing. I always love a performance. Go support your local theatre, especially now, if you can. You will never see a bigger performance than the apparent UK-US free trade deal. It is nothing than a big, massive performance. It's not going to happen. It is being done to essentially, keep the punters happy, shall we say, and keep them in the seats. Keep them clapping and applauding, and that's exactly what this trade deal is. It's nothing more than a performance. It's never going to happen, but many, shall we say, in the UK, and especially Conservative MPs, seem to think that it could just happen any day now. But again, there's no analysis that could indeed happen. But again, we're going to jump into that in a bit. And of course, but before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, pardon me, thank you very much to those people who do support the channel that way. So on with this. This comes from the Political Quarterly with the title of "Why the Idea of a UK-US free trade deal is little more than performance." A free trade agreement with the US has consistently been presented as the main prize for the UK's much touted post-Brexit trade policy independence. The UK Prime Minister's admission that this was not going to be realised anytime soon is merely confirmed that it was a complete long shot. Taken together with the very short-lived suggestion of the UK joining the United States, the Mexico and Canada agreement, we argue that this is a desire to try and perform independence from the European Union rather than a policy context, which is what is driving the UK's trade strategy. So although trade policy is hardly featured at all in the referendum campaign, it has arguably been the most significant policy development in the period since. Theresa May created the Department for International Trade less than a month after the referendum, and in January of 2017, she gave a speech at Lancaster House setting out the UK's negotiating objectives and red lines for the upcoming EU negotiations. The British people, the Prime Minister declared, voted to leave the European Union and embrace the world. I want us to be a truly global Britain, to be the best friend and neighbour to our European partners, but a country that goes out into the world to build relationships with our old friends and new allies alike. May's subsequent blueprint for the future trade deals and relations with the EU foresaw a far greater level of continued alignment with the EU than the Lancaster House speech had actually implied. This led to the Brexit hardliners to turn against May. A characteristic intervention, obviously from Donald Trump, suggested that Chequers and the Irish backstop would undermine a UK-US free trade deal, fueled the flames. Although May and Johnson differed on the regulatory alignment, at face value, they shared a very common objective: an independent trade policy. However, the price to be paid would involve a permanent hit to the UK economy far greater than what would be recouped through global free trade. The US came to be very politically totemic, in part because of its association with the Anglosphere, the idea popular in the Eurosceptic circles since the 1990s. As then the Trade Secretary Liz Truss put it at the launch of the UK-US trade deal talks, Britain and America are linked by language and law, habit and history. Our friendship is not just some alliance of convenience, it rests rather on shared values and principles. A trade deal with the US was also presented as the virility test of the UK's status as an independent trade power, designed to try and cement the separation from the quote protectionist EU. The UK government's trade deals so far, with 68 countries plus the EU, are almost without exception rollovers of existing EU agreements. Of all the negotiations carried out so far by the DIT, so far only those with the so-called proprietary partners, the US, Australia, and New Zealand, has it actually proposed ascension to a comprehensive and progressive partnership of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the CTIP. This would involve the UK becoming partly to entirely new agreements. As Table 1 shows, the US stands out from the most economically significant of these projected deals, but even here, the most optimistic projections of the GDP increase of just 0.16% pales in comparison with the comparable estimates and the cost of leaving the EU single market and customs union, which range between 0.8% and 12.5%, as you can see here. The two main domestic impediments to a UK-US free trade deal are, of course, that the NHS remains off the table, and the UK food standards must not be undermined. In other words, the very same obstacles that had derailed the controversial US-EU transatlantic trade and investment partnership talks in the UK, in which the case the food standards in the EU were more widely used. The US approach to food standards is seen as contrary to the procurement approach adopted by the EU and the UK. Add to this the concerns over animal welfare and the ability for UK farmers to compete with their US counterparts who are unburdened by such restrictions, you arrive at a UK Conservative Party that is invertibly split between what journalist Katie Ball has called the Waitrose and the Lidl Conservatives. The other backbone of contention is the NHS. The United States Trade Representative has been very keen to tackle the NHS centralized procurement regime, which is seen as an artificially holding down pharmaceutical prices, including beyond the UK. In the last UK-US negotiations was held just days before Trump was voted out of office. The Biden administration has now signaled that its priorities do not lie in negotiating new trade agreements. The new president has also expressed concern that Brexit might upset the Northern Ireland peace process. This was the context on the 22nd of September 2021, when the Financial Times, among others, reported that the UK government was considering an application to join the USMCA. This announcement took most trade experts by surprise, not at least since the USMCA does not actually have an accession protocol. Indeed, the space of 24 hours, the government was even distancing itself from the idea. The interesting question is now from the perspective of a broader UK trade strategy. Why is the idea of joining the USA ever even raised in the first place, given how little time it took for the government to actually dismiss its own proposal? We suggest that the UK's independent trade policy is performative in nature. Policy has not been driven by an economic logic, rather about its independence. Announcing talks with trade partners are enough for this goal to actually be realised. However, UK trade policy and sovereign requirements are far different from itself from the quote protectionist EU by signing new agreements. With the US-UK trade deal now officially and very publicly off the cards, the veil has now been even stripped even further. The DIT's attention has turned towards the Asia Pacific, but then again, this pivot is less about articulating new cohesive trade strategy driven by economic concerns than about mooring an imaginary global Britain from the EU economic space. So I think that puts it very, very clearly what the UK's policy has been. It's all been performative. It's all, oh, look at this new trailer that's coming. You know, we've all been there before when we've seen a trailer for a film that looks, oh wow, that film looks really cool. Let's go see it. You then see the film and you think, well, maybe the trailer made it look a lot better than the film actually was. That's exactly what's going on here. And this is going to massively damage the UK because there is no economic logical thinking to any of these free trade deals. If there was some serious economic free trade deals, serious economical thinking, this wouldn't be happening. Would have never Brexited in the first place. And remember, the Leave campaign expressly said we would never leave the single market and customs union. After all, no one was talking about that. Only a fool would leave the single market and customs union. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And also down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.